everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Reverend Kevin T. Taylor, a pastor, leadership advisor, and author of A Charge to Keep, a book that dives into the real weight of leadership and the decision leaders often carry alone. With experience across ministry and executive leadership, Kevin brings a grounded perspective on responsibility, courage, and what it truly takes, to lead with integrity when the stakes are high. Kevin, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be with you. Hello to all of your podcast listeners. It is a joy to join you for this conversation.
All right. So, yeah, I want to start from the beginning, the weight of leadership.
Mhm.
Well, I don't think, okay, well, it's a weight, right? So you talk about the ways of authority. What does it actually feel like to be a leader?
Yeah, so I think your listeners would agree, and hopefully you as a host would agree as well, that leadership is weighty, and so the expression goes, heavy is the crown that is worn, but I think that leadership brings with it the responsibilities of making good decisions, of ensuring that the outcome is defensible, and that you are carrying the weight of others lives in your hands. And so that is a challenge. And so as a pastor, as a C-level executive, I understand that I am answerable to individuals, ultimately answerable to God, and that is a significant weight. People don't know. What I carry to bed with me at night. People don't know the tears that I cry or the burden that I bear. I'm responsible for smiling through the pain and even when it hurts. And so that's a weight. And so one of the reasons why I wrote this book and have focused on executive leadership is that it can be weighty and it can make you feel like you're alone, but you don't have to go through it by yourself.
Mm. Wow. Okay, I'm not going to lie. Before now, I always think leadership, especially when it comes to church and Christianity, I always think it's easy, right? I never thought it had to do with, carrying weight and burdens of, other people. So now I'm rewiring my brain to actually think of what it is right now. So yeah, I want us to talk about like the decision no one sees. So what are some of the hardest decisions leaders face that people on the outside don't understand?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it could be any decision in an organization where they were not necessarily involved in the decision making. So, in a smaller organization, when it's a handful of people, there are lunch conversations. There is, it feels more participatory. But as organizations grow and as they scale, it's actually not possible for everybody to participate in every discussion. So, for example, it might be what are the benefits that are being offered to the organization? What are the health benefits? What are the wraparound services that are available? What are our hours of operation? What holidays do we get? When we were smaller, we could have those conversations together, but at a certain point, that becomes the purview of the executive team or the cabinet of the leader. And so those types of decisions are there. But then, and as you grow, you are less close to the types of decisions that would keep you up at night. So you don't know how close an organization was to not meeting payroll. You don't know how close a leader was or organization was to succumb to their competitors. You don't know what the landlord is saying or is demanding in exchange for. You just know that when you report to work, you expect electricity. When you go to the bank, you expect for your check to be deposited. When you go to the doctor, you expect for your card to work. And so you don't know the behind the scenes negotiations that make make those things possible. And the same thing is true in church. What bills are we going to be able to pay first? What do we have to be able to prioritize? The musician wants a raise and the choir needs new robes, but we also have back due bills and the roof is leaking. And I'm not using that to say specifically in my church. I'm simply talking about the types of decisions that are made. And so, well, why would we bring in that guest preacher? Why would we have that activity? Why are we choosing to invest over here and not over there? Those are conversations that not everybody is purview to and are the types of decisions that have real world consequences for individuals. Nobody wants to go to the doctor and their card doesn't work. Nobody wants to go to the bank and there is no money there. Nobody wants that experience. But for a leader, those things are top of mind, just like someone's promotion path, just like someone's healthcare that they are working through their health challenge, just like the person that needs to be onboarded and feel like they're part of the team. The managers carry and the leaders carry a great weight.
Hmm. Talking about carrying great weight, I just couldn't help but ask, right? You've been a leader for a long time now, and is there at any point, has anyone ever, try to make it easier for you? I mean, have the church come together to try to do something, or maybe like a charity? Because I feel, I'm not saying you're a charity case, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm saying.
I
But out
understand.
of compassion, if I see a leader doing so much, I would want to help the best way I can, like support the best way I can. So, has anything of such happened while you've been leading?
Yeah, so absolutely, I'm painting this picture of leaders not to be able to say that there aren't rewards, not to be able to say that there aren't people that care, not to be able to say that there aren't times when you do feel appreciated. I am saying though, those times come so infrequently that you can get discouraged that you aren't feeling those things on a regular basis. And so that just means that you have to take advantage of them when you can. So yes, there have been pastor anniversaries. Yes, there have been activities, for my birthday where people are, congratulatory and offer kindness. A lot of the kindness that is shown to me is actually shown to my children. And so for holidays, or when people go on vacation, Pastor, these are for the kids. We just wanted them to be able to have, a shirt from when we were on vacation. And so that's when you see that the seeds that are being planted are being harvested, and the kindness that is being paid forward. But then it's also why, as a leader, because I know those things come so infrequently, that I want to be intentional about making sure that staff feel like they are a part. So as I lead, everybody gets a birthday card. And then on your work anniversary, you get a work anniversary card. If you are if you've been promoted, there is a card for that. If you have been caught doing good, because right now it doesn't have to be you have to wait for your evaluation to get feedback. You might have done something that was meaningful, and so you go to the mailbox and you get a card. And I still believe that there is joy in going to the mailbox, even in this technological age, that there is still joy going to the mailbox and seeing someone say, "I see you." And if you lose a loved one, that somebody cares, that you are a mother, and it's Mother's Day, and so the organization wants to be able to recognize you and say thank you for caring about your children and allowing us into your life, because you could be spending that time with them, and the same for dads. And so what I'm saying is that because I know how meaningful it is for me, I want to be intentional about making sure that others have that experience. And so I send close to 5,000 cards a year to different people, to different things, wishing them happy birthday. I'm sorry for your loss. It is a ministry of love. And it of course originated in church, but the parallels in the workplace have meant those birthday cards and those work anniversary cards, they really do make a difference.
Okay, so yeah, thank you so much for that one actually. And it just made me understand, right, that people who are looking to go into leadership, especially in church, right? You're trying to make them understand what it takes to be a leader. It's not always rosy. Sometimes you carry burdens of the church, right? So you're trying to make them know that leadership takes a lot of courage and tolerance, right? And yes,
Mhm.
carrying out decisions under pressure, it takes integrity and yeah, sometimes burnout, but at the end of the day, it's worth it. So yes, I understand what you're trying to do. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
okay, so it brings me to this particular question, right? How do you it's integrity under pressure? So what does it mean to lead with integrity when the cost is high?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. The example that I offer here is that I've been fired from a job for the same reasons on two different occasions.
Hmm.
So the same reason, the same principled stand has cost me my job. So I was the interim executive, or sorry, interim CEO for an organization, and it was in the clean energy space. And so in clean energy, we're focused on making sure that the effects of climate change are minimized. And we know in communities of color, particularly, we are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And unfortunately, we are not well represented at the table where the decisions are being made. And so, in my mind, while oil and gas is in large part responsible for the carbon emissions that we are experiencing in the global warming, they also have the resources to come to the table to be able to help us to be able to solve the problems. So they spent the money, they've made the investments, they know where the oil wells are, oil wells are in the midst of the Arctic. And guess what? Those make great places for wind farms and natural gas. And so there's a synergy there. But to the purists in the climate space, working with an organization like Saudi Aramco, the largest oil producer in the world, was seen as blasphemy. I mean, like, there were members of the board that called oil and gas the devil. And this is not like this is what I was said. But for me, as a Christian, I believe in redemption and I believe in giving people a second chance. And so, when Zechariah stood before the Lord, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, Lord, if I have taken anything from any person, then I will restore them fourfold. Now, he was a tax collector, and the Bible says not just any tax collector, he was chief among them, which means he was the worst. He took the most money from the people. But here he is saying that, Lord, if I have made a mistake, I will restore the people fourfold. So Saudi Aramco set up a or $2 billion fund for climate energy. Yeah, they contributed to the problem, but they want to be part of the solution. So who am I to say that we should not work with them simply because we may not like all that they do or say? That's not a Christian value. That is that. So I lived that out, and it cost me my job. Went to another job and, talking about STEM education, working with preschoolers. And in that place, they had a STEAM lab, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And so I wrote an op-ed. And I said, that if there were an opportunity for oil and gas to give us money, that we should consider it. Not that we should take it, not that the board has to have it, but like, look, if you're listening, and you want to help us and this community to be able to make a difference in the lives of children, come on, let's talk about it. Oh no, we don't court any controversy. We don't. Why would you write that about oil and gas? I mean, literally had a board member to be able to say, "Are you on their payroll?" On their payroll. Like, why would I be on their payroll? I'm just telling you that they have money and that if they offer it to us, we ought to consider it. Well, we don't want to work with oil and gas. Now, when I showed them, and both of these examples are detailed in the book, when I showed them that, this little nest egg that you guys are sitting on that is growing every quarter and you're so proud of, let me show you how much of that portfolio is in oil and gas stocks. So you are truly benefiting from oil and gas in your nest egg. And you want to tell me that I'm wrong because I'm saying we should consider taking their money? But again, a principle stand, right? A stand that says you were part of the problem and now you're willing to be a part of the solution. So let's talk about it. Let's meet at the table. And so what we have in our world today, and you know this from where you're seated, we have a failure of ability to sit down and to talk with one another, to be able to look across lines of difference and to be able to say we have more in common than we have apart. And that while we might not agree on everything, we agree on enough things that we can walk together and that we can solve this problem together. That is what it's going to take. So no, I'm not asking to be the UN, General Secretary. I'm not asking to be the President of the United States. I'm not asking to be the ambassador to any country. I'm saying, can these principles be applied not just at work, but in the world? What would it look like if we were just willing to say, not that you are the devil, but that you've made a mistake and you've repented from that mistake. And so now you are willing to come to the table and to be able to help us. Why not?
Okay, wow. Okay, now that is the perfect example of integrity under pressure.
Yes.
That's wow. Being able to make decisions under that kind of pressure, it takes a leader, a good leader at that, to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm grateful that at the end of the day, you were able to make the right decision for yourself, right? So I think this brings us to, leadership burnout, right? So how do you think leaders manage the emotional and mental toll of constant responsibility?
So So it's a great question, and you said that I made the right decision. My bank account and my may tell you a different story, and so I think that's part of the balance, right? Is that like I lost my job, I lost that form of income on two separate occasions for the same choice, and so one might say, well, heaven, hush your mouth, be quiet, like we got bills to pay, and so like that's true, but again under pressure and with the responsibility of the now, like Dr. Martin Luther King talked about that it is what you're willing to stand for shows your true character and how important it is for you to be able to be a person of integrity. So in terms of your question about about leader burnout, it is easy to burn out. Like it's easy to be able to say that like this is just too much, and so I need to walk away. And so what you have to be intentional about as a leader is being able to create the space for you to be able to take rest. And so I can remember very well when I first started as the CEO of a charter school that, I was intentional about ensuring that, at least one day a month was going to be a day that does not have any work, that I'm just going to take off just to be able to be off and to be able to refresh. And like what that did was it created a space and also told my direct reports that it's okay for them to be able to do that. So like I don't like sending emails at 1 or 2 in the morning because that signals to your staff that that you're expected to be on all the time. And that's not true. When you're on vacation, be on vacation, enjoy yourself. You actually find that the building that the building still stands, that the work still goes on, the payroll is still being met, like life goes on. And yes, your presence was missed. So don't get me wrong, no one needs to be taking, extended, vacations that are unnecessary. But that your presence was missed, but also like it functioned. And that can give you the opportunity to deep breathe and for you to be able to see that, what, like, and this is another burnout lesson. This work is not my identity. It is a part of who I am, but it's not me. And so my family, my loved ones, my experiences, my life does not belong to this job. The job is a part of it. And so as soon as you are able to be able to dismiss those things and to separate them, the easier it becomes to be able to take a step back because any one of those things could go wrong. But let me tell you, as a pastor, been in the ministry for almost 30 years, I have never once, never been to somebody's deathbed where they have said to me, you know what? I wish I had worked more. I really wish that I had stayed in the office, just 5 more hours, and then I would feel. But they always say that I wish that I spent more time with my family. I wish that I took that vacation. I wish that I had told them that I loved them. And that is something that you can do now. You don't have to wait until later. So take those vacations, take that time. You will find that you are more receptive to the types of changes that are needed and more energized for the fight when you are rested and not when you are sleepy and cranky or hungry. And so those are the things that I would offer to prevent burnout. But it's hard because we care so much. But in the same way that we care about our organizations, the same way we care about our churches, we have to impart that same care to us, to ourselves, and to our loved ones.
Okay, wow. So what stood out for me, right? I
Mhm.
mean, everything stood out for me. I learned a lot here. But yeah, it's also important to know that the same way you care for the church and for people and for members of the church, you should also give that same love to yourself. And the funny thing is, self-love is so important because if you feel better, you treat people better. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
very important. So thank you so much for such thoughtful and powerful conversation, especially for anyone, carrying the unseen weight of leadership. Thank you so much for that. And yes, it brings me to my final question, right? I believe you have a message to leaders out there. Let's say for someone currently carrying a heavy decision, right? What would you want them to hear?
So I want you to hear that I understand that it's lonely. But I want for you to know that you are not alone. You are not the first person that has dealt with this situation. You are not the only person that has seen this level of opposition. You are not the only person that has been torn down, talked about, laughed at, disrespected. You aren't the only one, and you won't be the last. And so instead of bowing to the pressure, instead of saying that perhaps my idea wasn't the right one. Instead, look at it from the perspective of those individuals. Perhaps they are grieving the old way of doing things, and you just happen to be the person that is bringing them to the change. But just like a child, doesn't want to go and take a nap, and they are kicking and screaming and carrying on, it doesn't mean they don't need a nap. It just means that they don't want to do it. But you know that as a parent, that is what's best. And so as a leader, you've got to be willing, kicking and screaming, carrying on in awful ways to be able to say, and this is what we're doing, and here's why. And while the reward may not come immediately, you know that over time, you've done the very best that you can do to be able to help move the organization forward. So whether at church or whether in an organization, whether at home or whether in whatever circumstance you find yourself in, be confident that you are in this leadership position for a reason and that the weight that you have can be made less weighty, less burdensome, simply because you know that you are not alone.
Hmm. Oh, that's powerful. Thank you so much. That was powerful, actually. And yes, it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. It's called the rapid fire segment. So
All
yeah.
right,
All right,
rapid
starting
fire.
now.
All right.
All
So this
right.
is
So
one word answers.
yes.
Okay. All right.
All right. So leadership is
Responsibility,
right. Responsibility means
stewardship,
okay. Courage looks like
standing up for what's right,
okay. Integrity is
doing what you say you will do, regardless of what the outcome is.
okay. That's one sentence. but it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
And yes, finally, legacy is
Paramount.
okay. All right. So that was amazing, actually. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. And where can listeners get to know more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so I invite them to go to my webpage, which is revkttaylor.com. So revkttaylor.com. There you'll be able to find a link to my book. You'll be able to see about the different ways in which I am available to help. And I'm always welcome you to subscribe to my newsletters where you can learn more about these very same principles in action. Thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin. And to my listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Thank you, Kevin. Do have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
You as
Bye-bye.
well.